seed tray. Oh, it comes with some fertilizer. So, comes with a thin tray. We have also the thicker ones, you know, that are that'll last for years. I've had some of those thicker ones for 5-6 years. These, you know, you'll get a couple years, and then they just fall apart. But and then you'll have your individual cells, and I like to just kind of break them up. Makes it easier to work with. And that way, if you're planting a bunch of different things and they finish at different times, yeah, you can. Now, for a soil mix, you know, in the old days, you would just use some of your garden soil. But problems with that is it's best to start with a sterile soil. Because a lot of times, any soil that you've used before is going to have bacteria, fungus, and your little tiny baby seedlings can be very susceptible to what they call, well, damping off, which is excess moisture will cause fungus to grow. If you see like a little fur, and then there's a very good chance that'll kill your new seeds. So I like to start with a fresh bag of seed starter. You can also use Pro Mix, which is those big bales. You know, I'll buy one of those every 3 or 4 years and keep it in my greenhouse and just use it as I need it. And I like to have any kind of pan, old dish pan, a mortar pan, anything. Try to contain some of the mess. But I learned a lot of this from my grandfather out in the Midwest. He gardened, well, my relatives out there, but that's what they did, because that's what they had to do. But he would make his own seed starter mix.
They're afraid you get into the bag sometimes.
Yeah. It's supposed to be resealable, so there's a Ziploc somewhere down here. There it is. Okay. He would make his own seed starting mix, but to sterilize it, you need to heat it. You know, so you take a cookie sheet or a lasagna pan of soil, put it in the oven. Well, only when Grandma's not home. So
Had to get permission for that one.
she'd go out, and you know, he'd run in and put the soil in the oven, cook it at 350 for an hour, and then get it out before she got home. Hell, she comes home and finds a pan of soil in her oven. That was hell to put. So, but this will keep you out of trouble. Go with this right, hopefully. So right now it's just very loose, mostly a peat based, but I have a little bit of water in the bottom here, and you just kind of want to moisten this up. It takes a little stirring. It's almost like making dough, getting it all mixed up. A little more. If you get a little too much water, just add a little more soil. There's no, you don't want it to be goopy like mud, but if it's sort of kind of clumps together like that, then you're pretty good. You can make a little ball like that. But now we'll take your tray, and you can wear gloves if you want, but you don't have to. It's part of the fun getting dirty.
Yeah.
I grew up as a kid playing in the dirt, so I think it's good. They're supposed to say that's good for your immune system. So. So you just kind of level that off. And then put that in your tray there. So you want it to be, you want to pre-moisten the soil, because that way you can control how much moisture is in here. Too much and too little is bad. Too little moisture and the seed won't have anything to absorb to germinate. And too much moisture and it'll rot. So right now I'm going to start with, I've got some pepper seeds and some tomato seeds, some little container tomatoes. We have little labels, but I usually use like something like a little pencil or something to poke just make a little hole. Pencil works, a sharp pencil or a pen works great for that. And you just kind of make a little spot for the seed to go in there. And if you're using fresh seeds from this year, you could probably get by with just doing one per hole on these, because they have a pretty good germination rate. But if you're using seeds that are 2 or 3 years old, you might want to put 2 or 3 seeds in there, just because over years the germination rate will go down a little bit. But opens the pack. Now on these seeds, these are the Lake Valley. This is a non-GMO. It's not certified organic. They also have a organic certified seed. In my mind, if you grow it organically, it really doesn't matter where you start. But I try to stay more organic as much as possible. And you're going to see the seeds are very, well, you can't see with all the dirt on my hands, but they're very, very tiny. But you're going to take one little seed and put it in each one of your holes there. And you can top them down. You don't want to get them covered with more than maybe a 1/4 inch of soil. Now, let's do 6. Okay, so that's the tomatoes. And then you would generally write what you got on here, and then put your label in here. And I'll go ahead and do some peppers too. These are Italian sweet peppers. They're really yummy. They're good roasted on the grill. Now the pepper seeds are, yeah, almost can't really see. Very, very small. And again, one or two. Now, if you plant more than one per cell, you can thin them as they mature, or just sacrifice and keep the best one. No right or wrong. You know, one thing with seeds is I generally plant probably at least twice what I'm planning on growing, just in case I lose half of them. You know, and then if I end up with too many plants, I just give them away. Or find another spot to plant some more pots. So from here, you're going to want to put this somewhere warm. Most of these seeds are going to need a temperature of above 70 degrees to germinate. A sunny windowsill, I've done it like in the laundry room, near the water heater. But now, you know, in the old days, the top of the fridge was real hot, but now they're so efficient they don't get hot. If you don't have that, you can use we have a heat mat, which this will go directly under the flat, and you plug it in the wall, and it'll keep your seeds at temperature to germinate. And you only need to really keep them that warm until they pop. Once they germinate, once they germinate, you can take them off the heat. But you're also going to want to put some water in the bottom of the tray, just a little bit, and keep an eye on that. So when the bottom of the tray dries out every couple days, just add a little more water to the bottom, and it'll wick. Once if the soil stays moist, it'll act as a wick. Once it dries out, that's not great. So just keep it evenly moist and put a cover on it like this. That will keep the humidity in and keep it from drying out excessively. If you notice lots of condensation on the inside, you're probably too wet, and you can kind of just leave the lid off for a little while, let it dry, and then put the lid back on. That might leave it off for a few hours if you see a lot of condensation on the inside. A little bit is great, a little couple drops, but not like the inside of the showers.
Yeah. Full coverage.
And then most of these seeds, 7 to 14 days, you'll see a little something germinating. And once it germinates, it now needs light. If you don't provide light, once it germinates, it's not gonna survive. A southern facing window, plant lights, fluorescent lights. Don't use an incandescent bulb, the old school incandescents, because they'll cook your plant before it'll do anything useful. But there's some insanely good new LED plant lights that don't put out a lot of heat. We used to carry the fluorescent ones, but they're they still work, but it's kind of outdated technology. The LEDs are so much better. I don't have any of them in here yet, but we'll get some. And they don't use a lot of electricity, but you would put like a 1 or 2 2-foot tubes over here, and you can run it at least probably 14 hours a day. A lot of stuff, like little seedlings, you can run the light 24 hours a day, and it will give it a little more growth. These are some Better Boy tomatoes. We started back at the end of, it's probably been a few weeks, probably been a month, maybe not a month, maybe 3 weeks. We started in our warm greenhouse in the back, but they would just kind of live like so. And we also did some lettuce, like salad greens. Now they're still a little on the young side to transplant from here. I would let them get a little bit bigger, and then you can transplant them into a bigger pot using not a seed starting soil, but just a nice organic potting soil. And then put them in a tray, and again put them under lights. So you'll start with 72 cells, but when you end up with 72 pots, you now have 4 flats. So you're going to expand. As it gets closer to spring, you can put stuff outside. Certain things like broccoli, cabbage, and those colder crops you can do outside, and they can take some cold temperatures. But tomatoes do not, and peppers especially, do not like to get below 50 degrees. They will be very unhappy. And generally, if they get cold, a lot of times they'll stunt and they'll never quite catch up. I've done that test where I've had the same, seeds from the same pack, and some I'll plant outside early, and some I'll keep reserved in the greenhouse or under lights. And initially, the ones outside grow, and then they stunt in the cold. And then once I plant these out, they just, so they'll take off. So you generally don't want to put your tomatoes out until probably around Mother's Day. I've got some guides here that we put together that I'll give you. It's got your seed type, when it's best to start them indoors, when it's best to plant them outdoors, and spring and fall planting. We're fortunate enough to have a pretty good season. I usually have better luck with my broccoli in the fall than I do in the spring, because broccoli likes to be cool. So if you can get it in the spring early enough and harvest it before it gets hot, it's great. But sometimes that's tough, and if it gets real hot in May, your broccoli, instead of forming a nice head, it'll just go to seed, because that's its defense mechanism. It's trying to reproduce to grow again next year. But we want the nice broccoli flower. So if you plant it in the fall, it slowly grows through the winter, but it won't just bolt and go to seed like it will in the summer. The tomatoes, peppers, generally plant them in the spring, harvest them in late summer and fall. You're just going to get one crop of those. And then you want to keep like I said, you want to keep everything labeled, so you know. And if you have a little notebook, make notes of what you do, then you can go back to it. Some of us can't remember everything as we get older. It's good to make notes of what works, what doesn't, and then say, oh, well, this is something I did differently. Usually on the seedlings like this, you do not want to fertilize them. Everything, all the energy that the seed needs to germinate and to get probably to this stage, all that is in the seed. You don't need any fertilizer. You can very easily burn seedlings. I guess it's like, you shouldn't feed a steak to a baby, they tell me. So, and then once you do start to fertilize, I would start at least half strength of what they recommend. And I usually use like just a good liquid organic to start with. I stay away from Miracle Grow, and it's just like junk food for plants. If you're gonna eat it, what goes into the plant is what's gonna go into you. I use Miracle Grow on flowers and ornamentals and stuff, but I wouldn't